Hi, Peggy.
Hi, how are you?
I am doing really well. I'm so excited for us to finally get a chance to talk. Just for the folks that haven't met you, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Peggy Williams-Smith. I am the CEO of VISIT Milwaukee, a position which I took, what is the date today? Almost 5 months ago, so a little over 4 months ago.
You know, I everyone's perspective on this coronavirus crisis has been unique, and typically the overlap is about the challenges managing an organization and through a shutdown. Yours is one that I don't know that we've heard from before. You are at least partially responsible for helping the world get to know Milwaukee and choose Milwaukee as its opportunity for showing off and for convening people. How are you and Visit dealing with this?
Well, I mean, as you know, coming into this job this year, I was pretty fortunate that I was coming into what was supposed to be Milwaukee's busiest summer into fall ever. We were hosting the GMC, followed right afterwards by the USA Triathlon into NM, which happens every single year for us, but they moved their dates in order to accommodate the DNC. We had Moose that was supposed to happen in May, as well as, several other really large conventions. And this has obviously changed the focus of what we are doing, because our job this year was going to focus on taking care of these groups and making sure that we showed well on a global stage. Now, not all of that is gone. We're still going to be on a global stage. I know you may ask me some questions about a small group that may or may not have changed dates recently that we still believe is going to meet in person here. But, Milwaukee, the team at VISIT Milwaukee had been working tirelessly for years prior to this year to put Milwaukee in the global spotlight it deserved. And, when Vogue called us the sexiest city in the Midwest, or we were featured on every place you have to hit, it didn't happen overnight. That happened through the good work of the team at VISIT Milwaukee, the marketing communications team, who had really been focusing on building the brand of what Milwaukee is. So I'm so fortunate that I came to a team who had been there, who knew what Milwaukee had to offer, who had been working on what Milwaukee had to offer. And then now taking it and still making sure people know, but they're just getting to know us in a virtual sense right now.
I like the way you position that. It sounds as though the Visit team and so many others have really been investing in the Milwaukee brand for years. And in moments like this, we're almost drawing from a savings account of brand equity and goodwill. What do you think is the message that the outside world is hearing about Milwaukee right now in terms of how we're responding and how we'll recover?
When I look at what's being said about Milwaukee and Wisconsin, minus what's happening today with the election and all of the things that surround that, I look at people are still talking about Milwaukee because the DNC is slated to happen here. And that still puts us on a stage where we can talk about Milwaukee, regardless of what's being said in the press as to what's happening with the actual convention. I also personally think that we put safer at home orders in place quicker than a lot of other cities and states, which are going to help us mitigate the damage in terms of the number of people that will have to be hospitalized and the number of deaths we face. So, I look at it and think that we are definitely ahead of the curve. I remember sitting in a meeting before I think most of us realized how serious this was going to be for the United States. And we had just hosted the Wisconsin Restaurant Association show at the Wisconsin Center, and we were proud that we did that. And I went on a bunch of different TV stations saying, Milwaukee is still open for business. It's safe here. We're taking all the necessary precautions, not understanding what was happening. But shortly, I would say literally the day after the WR ended, we started to realize how serious this was and started doing what we needed to do to make sure that the citizens of this state and this city are protected, and that we would move forward with promoting our city virtually until we can meet again in person.
Until we can do so safely. So
Yep.
you brought up that that event that's now been rescheduled for August. What can you tell us about the conversation about, you know, we're hearing from the presumptive Democratic nominee about altering the format, potentially changing it to a virtual convening. What should we know? What's the buzz?
Well, I think I'll find out when everyone else does, because obviously this is not driven from anyone here. It's driven from the nominee, it's driven from the people who would attend this conference, and it's all fluid. It's fluid. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen. I do know that if in 4 months, if we are not as a country allowed to be meeting in person, we have bigger things to worry about than whether or not the DNC happens here in the city of Milwaukee. So I'm a glass half full optimist. So I have to proceed cautiously as though we are moving ahead with this convention as an in-person convention that will take place here in Milwaukee, that will allow the world to see what a great place we are to visit and how we will welcome all of these people into our home. You know, as Visit Milwaukee, we're working on things that can help our hospitality community get up to speed quicker. Obviously, right now, there's hotels and restaurants that are closed, that aren't open, that aren't waiting on people. So we know there's going to be some need to get some of the rust out of whenever we're allowed to start to gather in public again. So we're putting together some training that should help the frontline hospitality staff, learn about our city so that they can remember things to tell people who are visiting our city, and then B, some basic hospitality training so that if they haven't been working, or if we're hiring people who may or may not have been in the hospitality industry, they'll have an opportunity to learn how to greet people, how to look them in the eye, those types of things. And we're proud of that we're still moving forward with those things, because we think it's important that we help the hospitality community get back to normal as soon as it's safe to do so.
So I like that you're a glass half full person. Let's kind of go down that lane for a little bit. What is the opportunity that this change represents? I mean, the first thing that comes to mind for me is in a moment when we are being so deliberate, and this is partially about the DNC and just also about the shutdown. We're being so deliberate about the way that we are communicating, the way that we are presenting ourselves. You know, what are other opportunities that businesses, that your fellow GMC members, and that Milwaukee can take advantage of when we do start to open back up?
So not just as it pertains to the DNC, you mean overall, correct?
Yes, yeah.
It's, you know, I wish that I was a person who, there's going to be so many different things and so many different ways of doing business and how we come together and how we move forward out of this. This is something that none of us have ever seen before. I mean, this didn't happen in '87 when the stock market had the biggest crash. It didn't happen in 2001 when we had 9/11. It didn't happen in 2008 with the recession, where everything shut down so completely, so quickly, with no option. This isn't a, well, this person can go get a job. There is, it's just the most unique situation we've ever been in. So I don't know, the opportunities will be plenty. I don't know what they look like at this point, just because it's so new and it's so fluid and it's still changing. You know, I do see people coming together like they've never come together before. I see people doing things even though they themselves are in need. I think that is a really big piece about what I've seen about the absolutely generous spirit of Milwaukeeans that even though hospitality workers are out of work, they are providing food for people in need. I see people who have been laid off who are still ordering out so that those people who are still working can get a tip. I see people who have changed their entire company to help do things like make masks or make hand sanitizer. You know, there's just so much good that's going on in our community that we can talk about, that it makes me feel proud to be someone who's born and raised in this city. And I'm sure that this is happening in other places, but it's so prevalent here that it just makes me really proud to be a Milwaukeean.
I love the sound of that. And that was the best possible answer to that question, frankly. So let's talk about you. You did essentially just start this job, and you have been faced with a level of challenge that few of us could really understand or comprehend. So tell us, what have you been doing as the new CEO of an organization to advance communication with your team, get to know their work strategies, to stay connected, and to see your way through this, just from the perspective of a CEO?
Sure. Well, you know, there's a bunch of different things that are happening in play with what I do and what Visit Milwaukee does and the world of tourism. So I took over an organization that was very internally focused. They didn't do a lot of outward communication on a regular basis from the CEO position. And I knew coming in that communication and transparency is key. It's key to gaining partners. It's key to gaining trust. It's key to making sure your organization moves forward. So regular communication to me was just going to be one of the absolute things that I was going to do, and doing it even more right now. I have a communications plan that was put together by my director of communications, in which we are sending out emails and updates. You know, we have partners that depend on what tourism is happening in the city for their business. And even though that there's not tourism right now, keeping them up to speed with what the team is doing and what we are doing to promote the city and to promote it in the right light, because it's not like we can go out and say, come to Milwaukee right now. That wouldn't be prudent. It wouldn't be accepted if we were doing that, but making sure that people know who we are and that we will be ready when we are open for business. So with my team, we communicate via, much like this, go-to meeting twice a day, once in the morning, once in the evening, so that we can either catch up from what transpires during the day, and then also what happens overnight in case we get any communications. I have, unfortunately, like most people, I've had to go through layoffs and reduction in staff. So I'm 28% lighter than what I was a month ago. And then on top of that, we also froze some positions. But the team is really pitching in and doing what they need to do. So I've got people who are listening to every webinar there is, so that we can then put that information out to our partners and let them know what they can be doing to either communicate with their teams, to communicate with potential tourists when we come out of this. I'm sending out a letter to all of our partners once a week, in addition to our partner newsletter. I'm communicating with our GMs on a regular basis. I am communicating with our hotel GMs, I should say, as well as communicating with our directors of sales. You know, what's good is that we are still receiving leads into the city for future years. So, and you know, when you look at what's happening right now and the disparity between the really larger cities and the second tier cities such as ourselves, because we aren't seeing the sheer number of cases or deaths, even though every case and every death is very, very important, we're not seeing those types of numbers that you're seeing in a New York City or New Orleans. So we do have groups that are looking to relocate to a smaller city so that they can have their convention, and reaching out to us because maybe Chicago won't be ready in July, but maybe Milwaukee will be ready in July. So those are some of the conversations that we have taking place right now with people across the country, meeting planners, saying this is what we're doing. And another thing we did was we created a meeting planner health and wellness kit that we sent out to them. We created a video, which I can send you the link if you want to share it with your GMC members, that kind of talked about what Milwaukee is doing right now and how Milwaukee is coping and how we will be ready with open arms, a warm embrace, and a cold beer when we're ready to open. And we sent that to about 30 of our meeting planners saying, once we can travel, here we go. We also know that a lot of what I'm seeing from our travel industry experts is that when travel is allowed to happen again, it's going to happen via vehicle versus a airplane. I think it's going to take a little longer for people to feel safe to get to travel that way. And we are within a 6-hour driving distance from 1/3 of the population in the United States. So my marketing team is really focused on how we're going to drive leisure travel once people are able to travel again, because we think that we can make a huge impact in the city and we can get some of these restaurants back up, open, and servicing people if we can bring this in. And the other thing it does, when we look at what Visit Milwaukee does, our job is to create economic impact through tourism. But the reason I took the job, Elmer, I started out working at hotels, and I was in sales, and when I started, I sold weddings, I sold events, and then I went into conventions where the conventions, events, and weddings that brought people into our city employed people. They employed people in opportunity areas in our city. So if I walked into a ballroom and I saw a banquet server and they said to me, Peggy, why aren't I working tonight? It's a Saturday night. What, were you sleeping? I take that personally. And when I worked for Marcus Hotels and Resorts, I was able to make that identification and know that the people that worked in those hotels depended on me to be booking things into their hotels so that they could work. And this is just a much larger scale for me, right? If I walk into a ballroom on a Saturday at the Hyatt or on a Wednesday night and I don't see their rooms filled and people milling about their lobby, that's on me, that's on my team. We haven't done what we need to do to make sure this city is busy and that the people who work in our industry are able to work and make money to support their families. And, that is going to be the most important part of this coming out, is that we are making sure that we are able to communicate and tell people that they can come and they can travel and they can come to our hotels and go to our restaurants and visit our attractions and go to our festivals, so that the people who work in those places can go back to their neighborhoods, one of the 191 neighborhoods in this community, and infuse capital into those neighborhoods. That's really what my job is.
I have to tell you that your spirit of collaboration and frankly personal responsibility is inspiring. I think you're right. I think it's only by taking seriously our individual ability and our collective ability to restore the city to frankly something even better than what it's ever been. And I see a lot of places where, as we craft our own narrative in the future, we can make Milwaukee everything it can and should be. So I'm going to ask you to make some predictions.
Sure.
I want you to look 2 or 3 years into the future. So that's near enough that it's a reasonable prediction, but far enough that things could be very different. Where is Milwaukee? What's different given the experiences that we're enduring right now? At a cultural level, at an economic level, are there more people here? Less people?
Well, glass half full optimism. There's more people here. We have an expansion to our convention center, which is allowing us to host more people to come into the city to spend their money. Remember, tourism, which is one of the largest industries in the world, it's the third largest industry in Wisconsin, of which we are the largest contributor to Wisconsin's tourism industry. Tourism brings people in so that they spend their money here. It's not us. They're not, locals don't pay hotel tax, right? It's 15.1% on our hotel rooms. And it's very rare that someone who lives here is staying in one of our hotels. If they are, it's for a special occasion, and that's okay once in a while. So these are people who are contributing to our economy and allowing us to not have to pay as much in taxes because they are here. So the expansion of the convention center is 100% necessary for us to remain competitive in the tourism industry against our peer set. So in 3 years, 4 years, we should have an expanded convention center with enough square footage that will allow us to comfortably host 2 groups back to back, sell out all of our hotels, which will create compression, which will then just continue to expand into our different neighborhoods. And by continuing to brand and promote the city, we will have, sometimes the first time anyone ever visits Milwaukee is at a convention. It truly is. So, you've got the National Association of Underwater Basket Weavers who comes to Milwaukee, and there's people who are coming from all 50 states, and there's someone who may visit here from New York City who says, you know what? Milwaukee has all the amenities of a big city. It's got so many performing arts groups. It's got all of these different attractions. It's got diversity. It's got culture. And I want to live here. And that's my hope. Just in the short time that we've had the DNC and the DNCC, the host committee and the convention committee move into the city, and I don't know if everyone realizes this, but when we were chosen, people literally picked up and moved into our city. So there's a lot of transplants here. And some of the people who have moved here are like, I did not realize what a great city Milwaukee is, and I don't think I want to leave. I had one woman who, not born and raised, but lived in New York for the last 14 years in New York City, said she's never seen a Broadway show, never in New York City. Yet she bought the series for the Marcus Center for the Performing Arts to our Broadway Across America series because it was a great place to see Broadway theater. And then she also bought a subscription to the Skylight Theater and the Rec. Like, we are going to come out of this in 3 years. We will no longer be the quiet city, the city with the humble brag. We will be the city that's screaming at the top of our lungs what an amazing city we are. And again, I'm an optimist.
No, that sounds to me, that's not being optimistic. That's just predicting our really wonderful future. So I have to share with you, I moved here almost 7 years ago from Manhattan, from the Upper West Side of Manhattan. And I lived in New York City twice. I'm an East Coast guy, born and raised. And I have absolutely seen more live music, more live theater, the opera, the ballet. I have seen more of everything in the time that I've lived here than my life before then combined. So I agree with you on every point. So let's begin to close this up, because I don't want to risk ending on that, on anything other than that high a note. Mm-hmm. So you've got a private audience with as many as 200 or nearly 200 of this region's leaders, from the corporations, from the large nonprofit organizations, as well as the universities. What do you want to tell them? What do you want to ask of them? These are your peers. What do they need to know from you?
Well, first, be kind to each other. I mean, I think that is always important. Make sure that we're collaborating, that we're not stepping on each other to get somewhere else. But personally, and for what my business is, Milwaukee is an amazing place to meet. And each of you who belong to the GMC belong to organizations. You belong to national organizations. If you're part of a college and a university, if you're part of a law firm, if you're part of anything, you belong to an organization that supports the industry that you work. Milwaukee is a perfect place for you to bring that group of people to meet. We will make you look like a rock star. It takes everyone to highlight and showcase our city. And what our team is planning on doing is doing some sort of campaign at the end of all of this, like a Bring It Home campaign. If you belong to the National Association of Trial Lawyers, let's see if we can get that national convention here. If you belong to the Association of College and Housing for Universities, we already have that one, but I'm using it because I've heard of it. Let's bring that back. Let's get involved and help to create some economic impact for our city through tourism. And that's how each of you can help us to make sure that the meeting and convention business is strong as we move throughout this decade.
Fantastic. So what I just heard was you announcing the Bring It Home campaign.
Which I now have to go
launching.
back and tell all the people I work with that I announced it, even though we just started to talk about it.
It's announced, and it will be public summer 2020. Peggy, thank you so much for making some time to talk to us. I'm looking forward to seeing you face to face, hopefully in a near future.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for giving me the time.
That's great.